Okay, this slideshow is about Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, but it's also incorporated with some math problems that I made up. I've been doing with my math kids, my sixth graders, for a long time. I usually show the whole speech to them. I think it's about 19 minutes. You can get off YouTube. And I explained to them how incredible it was because it was so intellectual and it hit so many parts of American history. And he didn't go up there cussing and screaming and yelling and making threats and all sorts of stuff. He did it through intellectual words, through intellectual meaning. So I find it just a fascinating speech. And since it's recorded, all the better. So here are some math problems I've made up. They're all true facts, but I added some math in there to make it relevant. All right, the first problem is MLK made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech in 1963. How many years ago was this? There's a speech there. So feel free to pause any of these problems to have your students work them. Or if you're a student just wanting to work this, feel free to pause it and I'll show you how to work it. So all you do is do 2025 minus 1963. I am recording this in 2025, so that's obviously going to be wrong if you're seeing this years later. Also, you could state that it's not really 62 years ago because the speech was in August of 1963. So, I point out to my kids, it's probably 61 and a half years, whatever. But the idea is that 62 years ago this August. All right, in the speech, MLK says the phrase, "I have a dream" 8 times. What is 8 cubed? If you know what cubed is, go ahead and pause it and try to work it. Don't know what cube is? Here's a hint. Cube is to the third power and it's 8 times 8 times 8, which is 512. So he did say that 8 times in his speech, and a lot of people may think he said it more, but he really doesn't start saying it until the end of the speech. And it's kind of a crescendo. He was a Southern Baptist preacher, so it was just kind of a crescendo at the end. At the end of the speech, King gave a typewritten copy to George Raveling, a basketball player and volunteer for the event. He was offered 3 million bucks, but wouldn't sell it. And that's true. I added this next part to make it a good little math problem. If the value of this went up 1,500 bucks each year, how much would it be worth today? And I'm basing this off of the year 2025. And this is a picture of George Raveling with this speech. It's typewritten for all my kids. I have to explain to them what a typewriter is, and it's basically a computer, but if you made a mistake, you couldn't really go back and correct it. You could, but it looked messy. Anyways, it was what MLK used to type up his speech, and he gave it to George Raveling. I don't really know the background of why he gave it to him, other than he was a friend. So he was offered 3 million bucks, and he said no way. So how much would it be worth today if it went up 1,500 bucks each year? And again, 1,500 each year is a made up figure I made just to have a good math problem. You would do 3 million plus 1,500 times 62 in order of operations. You want to do 1,500 times 62 first. And 62 again is based on the year 2025, and it would be worth $3,093,000. My guess is it's probably worth a whole lot more today. All right, I put this as calculator active, but if you have a strong class or if you're a strong student, feel free to do this without a calculator. It's not that bad. Okay, there are about 250,000 people that attended that speech today, and that's true. And I made up this figure: 60% were dressed to impress. But honestly, if I had to guess, I'd say 90% or greater were there dressed to impress. If you look at the crowd here, there's just a snapshot. You've got black, white, mix, any kind of color person, and they're all dressed to impress. They all have ties on. Some have some nice looking hats. They were there to support MLK in a non-violent way. It was really incredible. And you had all kinds of people there. And I think the most incredible thing is people could hear him. A quarter of a million people, and people could actually hear what he was saying. All right, for this, let's just suppose 60% there were dressed to impress. How many people would this be? And you would simply just do 60% of 250,000, and 60% is zero point 0.6. Zero point 0.6 times 250,000 is 150,000 people. In this speech in 1963, MLK said 5 score years ago, he was referring to the Emancipation Proclamation that he put out in 1863, that Abraham Lincoln signed freeing all the Southern slaves. How much is a score? I really like this problem because the word score, I don't know the history of it, but maybe it was what was used, 100, 150, 200 years ago. I don't know. But I really find this a really great throwback for MLK to put this in here. He did it to honor Abraham Lincoln. And he was pointing out that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and we've still got a lot of work to do. Just freeing a slave doesn't mean you have equal rights. And so I thought it was a very powerful throwback to Abraham Lincoln. And I always challenge my kids, where was the word score used in Abraham Lincoln's speech? And if you don't know this, he gave a speech from the Gettysburg Address, and he starts out with 4 score 7 years ago. And it's a famous line. And he did it after the Gettysburg battle, which lasted 3 days, and over 20,000 people of our, Americans died, got hurt. Really, it was about 40,000 when you combine injuries, things like that, dead, wounded, everything. And Abraham Lincoln made an incredible speech. It was like 3 minutes long. It was so quick. There's not really any evidence of it. There's one picture, but that's about it. Anyways, Martin Luther King tied in a lot of his speech with the Declaration of Independence, with just our history of our country. And he tied this in. So he said, 5 score years ago, and I always challenge my kids and I ask you the same thing. Why not just say 100 years ago? Why 5 score? Well, I think it was because he was trying to honor Abraham Lincoln. And score sounds pretty cool. Maybe that's why Abraham Lincoln used it the very first time. So, how much is a score? Well, if it was 100 years ago, a score would be 20 because 5 goes into 120. And he said 5 score ago. So, 5 times 20 is 100. And there is a picture of the proclamation that Abraham Lincoln made freeing the Southern slaves. And I do challenge my kids too of, why did he free the Southern slaves and didn't say anything about the North? So that's kind of an interesting topic too. MLK was assassinated at the age of 38. How old would he be today? And again, I'm using this based on 2025. And his birthday is actually January 15th. We don't always celebrate on January 15th. It's the third Monday in January. And here's a picture of right after they heard the gunshot and he was shot. Um, you see in the three there pointing to where they saw the gunman. So they all knew it. The sniper was caught, and it was all caught on photograph. So it was pretty incredible. So how old would he be today? You want to do 2025 minus 1968 or whatever today's date is. All right, so the way I did it here, you could just subtract, but I like to show kids an easy way to do it. From 2025 is 25 years. From 1968 to 2000 is 32 years. And then you just add it together, you get 57. But then you have to add in the 38. And so he would be 95 years old today. MLK's speech is copyrighted, meaning no one can use it without permission. Now, if you did it as a class report and you restated it, no one's going to come and throw you in jail. But if you want to use a speech to make money or to get famous or something like that, then you'd have to get permission from the King's family until the year 2038. And this is true. And there's a article here that talks about King fights sale a speech record, sues three concerns on rights. So this has been an on kind of going legal thing for a lot of years with his speech. I just made up some math equation for this, if just to make a math problem out of this. So the year of copyright ends minus the current year squared. And you get 2038 minus 2025, which is, again, the year I'm recording this. And that gives you 13. 13 squared is 169. Robert Avery and two of his friends hitchhiked nearly 700 miles to Washington to participate in the march. And that is a true statement. This is a picture of Robert Avery, and he describes it. So it was a speech that people knew about, they wanted to get to. He and his friends traveled. So I made up the rest of the math problem because I don't know how fast he went on his traveling, but I just made it up as an average case. But it is true that he and his friends hitchhiked 700 miles to get to Washington from Gadsden, Alabama. Suppose the three boys traveled at a rate of 60 miles an hour on average, the average speed of cars driving to Washington. How long would it take them at this rate? So first, 60 miles per hour means 60 miles in 1 hour. So every hour a car travels, it goes 60 miles. Now, that's on average. It could go 70 at some point or 50 at some point, maybe 5 at some point if there's a traffic jam, and then maybe 100. But on average, 60 miles an hour. So 60 plus 60 is 120, which equals 2 hours. 60 plus 60 plus 60 equals 180, which is 3 hours. So I'm just adding 60 each time to get another hour. So what number do I want to get to? Well, I want to get to 700 miles. So 180 miles is 3 hours. Well, I got to get all the way to 700. I got to keep going, add another 60. Or you can just divide 700 divided by 60. And that's going to be an easier way. And that gives you 11 hours with some time left over. So if you do 11 times 60, you get 660 miles So 700 minus 660 is 40 miles left. So it would take him 11 hours and 40 minutes of driving time to get to Washington. About, obviously, it's going to be, a little bit different here and there. In 1963, here are some prices for some common items. Coke is 5 cents, box of Cheerios 26 cents, toothpaste 50 cents, movie ticket 85 cents. How much would the following cost in 1963? By the way, in present day, around 2025, the cost would be a total of 37.26. And I got the 1963 cost of living to the side over here. It's pretty interesting. Average income was what, 5,000 bucks. A new house is 12,000 bucks. So it's pretty interesting. All right, three Cokes at 5 cents is 15 cents. Two Cheerios at 26 cents, it's 52 cents. Three toothpaste at 50 cents is a dollar 50. Two movies at 85 cents is a dollar 70. So you add all those up and you get 387 compared to 37.26. So that's what inflation does. Inflation is not a bad thing, but it is a fact of life that things didn't cost less way back when. And that is it. I hopefully enjoyed these math problems and hope you learned a little something.